The average sales price in Ada and Canyon County appreciated by more than $100,000 in 2021. Let's talk about that as well as my predictions for 2022 in this week's segment of Market Watch. Hi everyone, it's Joshua Barks here, Associate Broker with Keller Williams Realty Boise and Team Lead of the Barks & Co. Real Estate Team. Thank you for tuning in to this week's segment of Market Watch, where if you're new to the channel, we talk about the Boise area housing market on a week-over-week basis, and then once a month we go into a deep dive into the market dynamics for both Ada and Canyon County. This week is one of those long ones. It's a deep dive into the market dynamics. We're actually going to recap what happened in 2021, as well as go over the predictions for 2022 that I have based on the information in front of me. So, I will include the timestamps in the timeline bar on YouTube below, so you can drag to directly the segment that's important to you to save you time. And then I'll also give you a couple of highlights really quick for both Ada and Canyon County. So, Ada County average sales price came up almost 35% last year with a new average sales price of $575,000 compared to the year before where we had $427,000. So that's almost $150,000 increase year over year. Now, when you're looking at Canyon County, we also saw a 34.8% increase year to date, and the average sales price in Canyon County is just over $400,000, whereas in 2020 we had the average sales price rounding out the year at just under $300,000. So that's over $100,000 increase year over year for Canyon County as well. Now, one thing to note is we have more listings than we had in 2020, which is no surprise in both Ada and Canyon County, but we still have less listings than we had in 2019 and in 2018 in both Ada and Canyon County. Now, we have more pendings and more sales going on right now than what we saw in both 2020 and 2019 in Ada County. In Canyon County, it's been about pretty consistent overall, though we have slightly more now than what we had in previous years and slightly less in some other areas. We'll get into that in the deep dive section. Interest rates also, as part of a bullet point, are just under 3.25% right now for the average 30-year fixed. So important to note, the Fed is going to be raising interest rates 3 times this year. That's what they've indicated. So we're going to anticipate interest rates based on some of the reports that I've read going to be about 3.5% by the middle of this coming year or this current year in 2022. Midsummer, expect interest rates to be about 3.5%. So let's get into the deep dive, going over the market dynamics, and then after that, I'll get into a wrap up and talk about our predictions. So we have December 2021 market dynamics. We're going to go over both Ada and Canyon County. I'm excited to bring this one to you because it's going to be a recap over the whole year. So first off, let's start with Ada County as always. And if you thought 2020 was a crazy year for housing in our area, 2021 was even crazier. Now, let's start with the market trends chart like we always do. So next slide, we're going to talk about what's going on right now compared to what happened in 2019, because that was kind of when our market was quote unquote normal, pre-COVID market. So we have 275 active listings in Ada County right now, which is still abysmal. Very few listings compared to what we normally see this time of year. And as you can see, we had 402 back in December of 2019, 551 in 2018. So we usually average, around that 500 number for this time of year, at least for over the last several years, excluding 2020, of course, when we only had 85 active listings. So then when we're going on to pendings and sales, we actually have more pending now and more sold in the month of December than what we've experienced over the last 3 years. So 500 pending compared to 675 sold, 399 pending, 596 sold, and then 479 pending, 552 sold, and 461 pending, and 509 sold. So as you can see, we have more sales, more pending, and fewer listings. So these numbers right here show that back in 2019, when we had 402 active listings, 479, and 552 closings, we were anticipating another strong spring selling season. And when we went into this year, when we had 85, again, I was saying from December 2020 to, going into the year, we were going to, quote unquote, go back to normal if we had enough listings. But of course, as you know, listings, we just barely had any going into the year until, late summer, when we started feeling, everyone was like, oh my gosh, the market is crashing. It's falling from the sky. No, that didn't happen, as you know, because we just had more listings. Finally, it was starting to balance out a little bit. And while, yes, it cooled down, it went from basically 105 degrees to 90 degrees. So still a hot market, but not as crazy as what we were seeing. So that was actually good. I was hoping we would stay around there, but of course we plummeted as the year went on. And we always see the fewest number of listings, the fewest number of sales, and the fewest pending in the winter months. Because people are distracted with the holidays, and then weather here in our area. December and January tend to be our heavier snow months on the years that we get lots of snow. And this year looks like it might be one of those. It's been pretty wet so far. So that's really good for the spring. Hopefully that'll help with the droughts that we've been experiencing. So then when you're looking at the listings compared to, what we normally see and what we saw last year, again, I don't think our market is quite yet getting back to normal. It's still going to be quote unquote crazy, but I don't think we're going to continue to be as crazy as we have been, because that doesn't make sense to be continuing on the pace that we have, because it's been insane. So year to date, the average sold price so all the sales over the last 12 months, we ended the year in 2021 with an average sales price in Ada County of $575,000. That's $150,000 more than what we ended in 2020 with $427,000 as the average sales price. So 2020, when we said that was a crazy year, we came up almost 18%, 17.9% year for the full year in the average sales price. This year, we're almost double that with 34.6%. Now, for the coming year, 2022, I don't anticipate that to continue again at this pace, because that would be astronomical. And we are going into the year with more listings than what we experienced last year. Again, it's still not very many. It's less than 300, which is still terrible for the amount of demand that we have out there. So there are going to still be bidding wars and potential price increases and things like that. But I do see at least prices slowing down. They aren't coming down yet. They're not lowering prices yet, but they are starting to slow down, which is good for buyers and just good for our market in general, because I think, we're due for that kind of correction. I think 2022 is going to be potentially that correction year where we finally start to plateau out. Like I've been saying, we'll get to a point where we will plateau. I think we're almost there, if not there already. I do still anticipate significant growth for 2021, though. When we're talking about, the pricing breakdown and days on market and things like that, we have come up. 13 days is now the average days on market if you look at all of the sales over the last year, which is up from last month's 11 days. So that's great. Again, in 2020 even, we were experiencing this average days on market over the last 12 months being in the 20s. So it's still pretty low right there. But when you're looking at what's going on for pendings in Ada County over the last 30 days, so just everything that's marked pending right now, not the sales, but the ones that are actually pending, our average days on market before those homes went pending is about 30 days. So it looks like we're finally starting. That's why this average number is coming up, and we're finally starting to kind of balance out there, because things are taking a little bit longer to sell. Now, a big part of that is because pricing. People are still pricing their homes way too high, and so they're sitting on the market and eventually lowering the price, and then finally getting to the price that the market will bear, and then selling 30 days later. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a seller's market. We have less than half a month's supply in our area, which is a strong seller's market. If you remember, a seller's market is anything less than 4 months supply. Anything between 4 and 6 months is considered to be balanced. Anything beyond 6 is considered to be a buyer's market. So we are a strong seller's market all the way past 2 million. I mean, we are under 1 month supply up to 1.5 million. Now, that's not surprising for this time of year because, again, we have very few listings on the market. If you looked at this in the springtime, these numbers, of course, will be a little bit higher because we'll have more inventory. Right now, we just don't have the inventory, and historically, the sales are still pretty consistent and pretty fast overall, so we're seeing these numbers dwindle. Now, the average sales price, again, $575. Well, the average pending home in MLS right now is $618, and the average asking price of everything in MLS is $770,000. So we still have, this is what sellers want, this is potentially what they're getting, this is what they're ultimately getting over the last 12 months. So we're still going to see an upward pressure on prices. This is a pretty good predictor of that. And when you're going into the breakdown overall, 100.5% asking price to sold price ratio. So we're still seeing, on average, more listings selling for over asking than under asking. So that's kind of what we have there. The top 3 areas for Ada County, Garden City finished the year at 44.1% increase. That's insane. Almost 50% of the value. So yeah, average sales price in Garden City, $554,000 and change. Then coming in at number 2, still above 40% year to date, $552 for Meridian. And then Star actually edged out Eagle by just 0.1%. Eagle was 39.1%. Star is 39.2%. Average sales price in Star being $600. So that's our top 3 areas that grew in 2021 for Ada County. Next, we're going to talk about what's going on in Canyon County, and it looks very similar to what we're seeing in Ada County. Again, let's start with the market trends chart in this upper left-hand corner, and we're going to compare this year to 2019, so pre-COVID times. 155 active listings right now in Canyon County, compared to 230 that we had in 2019, and of course 67 last year, basically zero. 237 are pending now, which is up slightly from what we saw this time last year, and the number of closings is actually down by 1, 302 this year compared to 303 last year. So that's really interesting. It looks like Canyon County is starting to slow down just a little bit more than Ada County. And I'm not saying slow down as in crash. Prices aren't going to be coming down in either Ada County or Canyon County anytime soon. Inventory is still way too low because we still have, we still have way more pending than we have active. And then when we're looking at what happened during pre-COVID, of course, we had 282 sales, 236. So we still have sold more than both 2019 and 2018. And then 255 pending and 267 pending. Yeah, that's more pending than what we have right now. But again, we have way less listings than what we had both of those years in 2019 and 2018. And as we went through the year, of course, we got to our peak in 2019 of 413 active listings, whereas the peak in Canyon County, again, was in that late summer months with 407 homes. And of course, everyone said the sky is falling, the market is crashing and everything at the end of summer because you could feel that things were finally starting to slow down. Things weren't going pending on day one. They didn't have 30 offers on one listing. Instead, you had, maybe 5. And then now, right, this time of year, we're experiencing, 5 or less. Unless your house is just absolutely beautiful, marketed well, and priced correctly, that's when we're getting, highest and best dollars, because then you have multiple people competing for that. When we're looking at the year-to-date average sales price and the growth there, that's also pretty astronomical. Now, Ada County, we saw the average sales price come up by basically $150,000. Well, Canyon County has come up by $100,000 year over year. Absolutely incredible. 34.8% increase in the average sales price is what we rounded out 2021 with, up from basically $300,000 in 2020 with a 20% growth, which we thought was incredible because that, again, was the highest we had pretty much seen since not the crash, but the bottom of our market back in 2011, 12, 13, because that's when we were starting to rebound and gain that growth back. So this 34.8% is the most we've appreciated in 1 year in the average sales price ever in Canyon County. So that's really interesting to see. Again, I don't think we're going to continue at that pace. That seems to be unrealistic. Yes, we are going into the year with still fewer listings than pendings, and so supply and demand is still severely undersupplied and lots of demand, but we have more than what we had going into 2021, and I actually anticipate 2021 inventory to start taking off pretty soon, because the weather has been mild-ish, and I think now that we're hopefully on the tail end of the pandemic, people are going to start moving again at their regular pace. So that's kind of what we're seeing for the average sales price there. When we're looking at the breakdown, again, we have a half a month supply in Canyon County with 13 days average on market. 402 is the average sold price. 440 is the average price for those that are marked pending in the multiple listing service. And then the average asking price for everything in the MLS for Canyon County is $512,000. So again, we are over $100,000 difference between what homes are selling for versus what is being asked for right now. Now, again, this time of year, we don't have very many listings on the market at all. So these inventory numbers are going to be really low because we just don't have the inventory. Now, as that picks up, these numbers will increase. So we still have less than a month's supply up to 600,000 in Canyon County. Nothing basically over 1.5 million, which makes sense for Canyon County because it's generally less expensive than Ada County. And as you know, seller's market is pretty much anything below 4 months supply. And then anything beyond 6 months is considered to be buyer's market. And then anything between the 4 and 6 months is considered to be a balanced market. We are still a long way to go before we get to a balanced market. It might be slightly less of a seller's market as we get into 2022. But again, things here are looking up to be pretty consistent to what we saw going into 2021. So again, expect another strong spring selling season. For Canyon County, the top 3 areas, Melba, absolutely ridiculous, up 100% year to date so far. Now, I do want to note that both Melba and Wilder have less than, I think, 20 sales in the last year, maybe even combined. And so this average sales price is going to be a huge jump anyway, because there aren't a lot of sales to average out. There's only a few. So as you know, averages can be swayed really effectively when there's only a small sample. Greenleaf has a lot more, but still not as many as what you'd see in like downtown Nampa and things like that. So 102 year to date, average sales price $523, up almost 60% in Greenleaf, $430,000 for that average sales price. And then Wilder also up about 60% with an average sales price of $385. So again, pretty big contenders. I do anticipate, Melba, that average sales price likely coming down. Same with Greenleaf, potentially even Wilder, because again, the sample size is really low, and I don't think prices are going to continue at this pace because this is kind of unrealistic of an actual pace because there's only a few sales. Next, let's talk about the interest rates. So interest rates are actually on the rise, like we were saying they were going to be. We ended the year with interest rates just under 3.25%, whereas last time we did one of these deep dives, it was at 3.1%. So we're up from the bottom of the interest rates of what we saw in early 2021 of basically 2.5%, a little bit higher than 2.5% for the average on the 30-year fixed, according to Freddie Mac. So we're up, half a percentage point. And the Fed has said that they're going to be raising their rates 3 times this year. So we're anticipating interest rates to be about 3.5% by the time we get to the middle of the year, so summertime. And because of that, that's going to also put maybe a damper on prices a little bit as well. Because as you know, interest rates rise, affordability decreases, and we already have an affordability problem in both Ada and Canyon County, really all over the nation, but specifically here as well, because that's, the market I focus on is the area we live in. So when we're talking about interest rates, I don't expect prices to come down, but I think that they won't be able to continue to skyrocket because interest rates will come up. So with interest rates coming up, people won't be able to bid it as high, won't be able to pay as much. So we're going to see prices not rise as quickly. That's just kind of my prediction for that. So if you are thinking about moving this spring, or even if you're looking at early or late, mid to late summer, like now is the time you want to meet with a real estate professional so that you can get your ducks in a row. Especially if you're thinking about moving in the summertime and maybe you're a first time buyer. And again, with those interest rates coming up, you're going to be in that really competitive price point, very likely. And because of that, you want to get in probably as soon as you can, but it needs to be realistic for you. It's not about, I don't care what your timeline is. I'm just here to help make your goals a reality. And the best way that I can do that is meet with you up front, make sure that you're super prepared for what's going on in the market, and that you can, work on getting your pre-approval and making sure that if there's any issues with getting a pre-approval, now, so that when you find a place that you're in love with, when you're ready to move in spring, summer, whenever it happens to be, you can actually jump on it. Because if you wait until, when you're actually looking at houses and then you wait to get that pre-approval and you find out you have an issue, well, you're going to lose the house of your dreams just because you didn't prepare for it adequately. I'm a planner, so that's what I like to say. Now, on the selling side, it's also a great time to meet with me to discuss what's going on in the market, as well as figure out what your goals are for your move, whether that's staying here locally or moving out of the area. Now, when it comes to selling, the reason it's good to meet early, because I'm meeting with sellers right now that want to list in the spring and early summer, that are thinking about it. So we're meeting now to actually figure out what are going to be the high value projects to work on to get your house really ready for the market, if that's something you want to do. Not everybody wants to put a little bit of money into their house in order to make it sell for more, though that is something that I encourage and have a lot of fun with, helping coordinate contractors and getting the work done and really being able to unveil your house to the marketplace and make it shine for everybody. And then, those are the ones that people fight for. And so it's really satisfying to see one of those projects come together. So if you have a home to sell in the near future, now's the perfect time to begin preparations to get your home on the market. Like maybe you don't have very many preparations to do. Maybe it's just a little bit of touch-up paint or, a deep cleaning, something like that, and just thinning out some materials. I can get you on as early as middle to late January, maybe even February. It just depends on your timeline. But again, if you wait until, okay, now I'm ready to move, and then we meet, and then we have, you need to replace some carpet or get, whole rooms changed, or maybe you need some help on the landscaping and things like that. Because contractors are so busy, you might be pushed out later than what your ideal move date is. And I just don't want that to happen to you if you're in that situation. Again, so that's really what we have for the area. If you have any questions about what's going on in our market, I am always here, always paying attention to the trends and things like that. You can reach me at 208-914-1095. Of course, check out our website as well. We have our listings on there, as well as booking software that I know I've mentioned a few times, where you can actually schedule a meeting with me directly through the website. You can just fill out a form saying, hey, I'm a buyer, hey, I'm a seller. Here's a little bit about me or what I'm looking for. And then, bam, you put a meeting right on my calendar and we get to move forward from there. All right, so that's everything that we have going on in 2021 compared to what happened in 2020 and 2019, as well as talking about kind of the best time to plan on buying or selling if you want to move this early spring or anytime in the spring or early summer. Because right now is when I'm meeting with people talking about moving in spring and summer, because there's a lot of preparations that may be up front. Sometimes it doesn't take very long to prepare at all, and in some cases it takes a little while. Maybe there are some things that come up when you're trying to get pre-approved as a buyer that you can take care of now, so that when you're actually ready to move and something comes up that you like, you don't miss out on your dream home because you're actually pre-approved and ready to go, and then you can just go at it. And then on the seller side, maybe you have some projects that you want to make sure that you finish or get started. Maybe there's some painting you need to do, or some landscaping and things like that, just to make your home look super fresh and ready to go. And that's something that we can get started on now, so that when you're ready in the spring or summer, we can again hit the ground running rather than scrambling at the last minute to get everything ready. So that's kind of what we ended with. And when we're talking about our predictions for 2022, now I don't anticipate average sales prices to appreciate another 35% in either Ada or Canyon County. That would be insane. I know that this sounds very similar to the video I put out earlier in 2021, talking about my predictions for 2021, saying it was going to be slightly less than what we saw in 2020. And boy, was I wrong. Though I did expect inventory to come up significantly much earlier in the year. And we still only had 100, 200, 100, 200 listings through the spring. And it wasn't until the middle of summer, late summer, that we had a substantial, but still less than what we normally have, amount of listings on the market. And we're going into this year with, again, less listings than we typically have this time of year, even though it's slightly more than what 2020 was. And I do anticipate this year to be slightly better, because I think more people are comfortable as we get, closer to the tail end of this pandemic. More people are comfortable putting their house on the market and actually moving and kind of resuming their normal lives for the most part, whatever normal is. And because of that, I think listings are going to come up pretty significantly as we get into the year. The weather's been fairly mild, and it looks like it's going to be nice for the next couple of weeks. Maybe I don't want to say that. Maybe that's jinxing it, but as of right now, it's a pretty good forecast out there. Great for home buying, and we're shaping up to have a wonderful spring market. It's going to be really competitive. I anticipate seeing lots of listings, lots of buyers happening, and just lots of activity again. So average sales prices are likely going to continue to increase throughout the rest of the year. Again, I don't think they're going to be at anywhere near the pace that we experienced in 2021. I would say we're probably going to be about half of that. So we had 35% roughly for both Ada and Canyon County. I'm expecting to see no more than 17%. We might have another 20% year. I still think that would be on the high side. I think that's too high, because as we know, interest rates stayed super low last year, meaning affordability was better. We still have an affordability problem overall, but affordability, people could afford to pay more because interest rates were low. And because this year they're going to be rising, we're going to not see, likely we won't see prices just skyrocket, because people will be able to afford a little bit less and less and less as the year goes on. Now, I'm not saying that prices are going to come down, because I don't see that happening anytime soon, but I do think that prices might start to stabilize and balance out a little bit, because again, we're seeing sellers that are overpricing their listings, so they're staying on the market, and we're seeing, buyers being a little more picky, because of course they're at the top of their price range a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times when they're looking at stuff. And because of that, we have, pickier buyers and sellers that are trying to still be greedy. We're seeing price reductions. And so that's leading, again, people to say, oh, prices are coming down, prices are starting to fall, the market's going to crash. Again, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Now, there is a possibility that something happens in the larger economy or the world economy again, similar to a pandemic, that just rattles the markets overall. And yes, of course, that'll probably trickle into the housing market, but the housing market specifically, as its own little bubble in its own little niche, we're likely to see prices to continue to rise, demand to continue to be pretty high, and listings to still be likely undersupplied for a while. I don't think we would, again, have to see a dramatic increase in listings and a dramatic drop in buyers in order to start balancing out. We haven't seen a balanced market in our area for many, many years. And yes, we have appreciated for a very long time, longer than most markets go. So that's one of the reasons why people are saying we're going to crash. And I don't think that's going to happen soon. Now, I'm not saying that prices won't ever come down again, and because they probably will. What goes up comes down. That's typical market cycles. I don't think we're going to see prices ever be 250,000 for your typical 3-bed, 2-bath on the bench in Boise or something like that. I just don't think that's realistic. Because even if we lost all of the equity in the average sales price that we lost in 2008, we would still be over $300,000 for the average sales price for our area. So because of that, it'd have to be, whatever hit us would have to be worse than the financial crisis of 2008. Now, I don't know where that would come from, but it doesn't look like it's going to be coming from the housing market specifically. So yeah, we're going to see inventory rise. We're going to see prices rise. We're likely to see demand rise as well as we get into the year, because I know a lot of people were holding off over the holidays because the holiday time of year is when we're experiencing the lowest level of activity. That's just typical for our area. Lowest number of listings for the year, lowest number of pendings, and lowest number of sales. That's just usually what we see in the winter months. And this year kind of appears to be no different. Of course, it's a little bit different if you compare it just directly to last year. But again, last year kind of doesn't count along with 2020. If you're looking at 2019, again, you can see that we're right in line with going off into a really strong spring selling market. And with interest rates on the rise, you'll probably want to act sooner rather than later, depending on what your specific situation is, because of course everybody's timeline is different, and I'm not telling you what to do with your timeline, just giving you the information that I have in front of me so that you get to make the decision that's right for you and your family. So that being said, if you are thinking about buying, selling, or maybe even investing in real estate, I'd be happy to help you either procure that and accomplish your goal, or at the very least sit down with you and talk about what's going on in the market, how that might affect you and your specific situation, because it is an individual basis. This is just kind of a generalization of the market overall, and discuss what your goals are and see if that's something that we would be a good fit for. And we might not be, but we might be. You just don't know until we meet. So go ahead and get on my website and schedule a meeting with me through my booking software, or you can always call or email me to get that scheduled. Or if you just have some questions, leave some comments, or again, reply to the email if you're on my list here, and let me know what you want future videos to have, and if you have any questions about this one or what's going on in the market as a whole, because I'm here to try to educate you best I can with what I have. So that's it for this week. Sorry again for a super long video because it's our deep dive and we had a lot to cover today. Next week's going to be shorter because it's just going to be our week over week numbers, and I'm really excited to share with you what's been going on for the first 2 weeks of the year once we get to that point. Okay, well, I hope everyone continues to have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.